This is CharlieTan walking into Walmart in Cortland County to purchase a firearm. Due to not having enough documentation, he was unable to secure the firearm. In his 2015 murder trial, Charlie's attorneys mounted a defense that there was not sufficient proof that Charlie killed his father. The trial ended with a deadlocked jury and no verdict. County Court Judge James Piampiano later dismissed the criminal counts, ruling that prosecutors did not present sufficient evidence to warrant the charges, and Charlie walked out of court as a free man. CharlieTan was born Charles John Tan in 1996 in Canada. His parents are Jean and Jim Tan, and he has a brother named Jeffrey. Charlie's parents moved from China to Canada and later to upstate New York when Charlie was a teenager. His father was a successful business executive who owned a company called Dynamax Imaging LLC. Dynamax Imaging LLC is a leading developer of high-performance CMOS image sensors. The company boasts an extensive and rapidly growing IP portfolio covering pixel, sensor, and system architectures. CharlieTan and his family lived in Pittsford, New York, during the period when the events of this case took place. Charlie attended Pittsford Mendon High School, a public high school in suburban Rochester, Monroe County, in upstate New York. He was a high school class president and a football player. He served on the board of the local YMCA. He was cool, diligent, and headed places, including the Ivy League. Charlie graduated in 2012, then joined an Ivy League college in 2013, Cornell University, in Ithaca, New York, a few hours' drive from his hometown. He joined a fraternity there and the sprint football team. From the outside, the Tan family appeared to be thriving. However, on January 28, 2015, Jean made a 911 call, desperately asking for help. She told the dispatcher that her husband tried to choke her, but her husband downplayed the incident and called her childish.
911, sir. What's the address of the emergency?
Yes, hi, my name is Jing Tan, and my husband, I need your protections. I'm so scared. Please,
You want an
please
ambulance?
help.
Okay.
All right, so there's no issue here. Just my wife and myself have some arguments.
Despite this, a deputy visited their home, which was routine for the 18 calls made from their residence between 2003 and 2015. The officers gave Jean Tan the option of having her husband charged with a misdemeanor, but Jean refused to have her husband arrested. Jim Tan agreed to leave for the night, and the police went home. Jean then called Charlie and told him that his father, Jim, had choked her, causing her to lose consciousness and leaving red marks on her neck. She said she thought she was going to die and believed Jim would kill her next time. On January 29, 2015, Jeffrey texted Charlie about their father's abuse and told Charlie he would soon have to make an important decision. Charlie understood this to mean that he needed to step in and protect their mother. On February 5, 2015, Charlie left Cornell University after emptying his 2 bank accounts. He told his football coach he wouldn't be at practice the next day, and then he went to buy a shotgun at a Walmart in Cortland County, but couldn't because he didn't have the necessary documentation as a Canadian citizen. Charlie felt scared, but believed he couldn't turn back. Later that day, he convinced his friend, Whitney Knickerbocker, to buy the Remington 870 pump-action shotgun for him, telling Whitney he needed it for a hunting trip. Charlie and Whitney were both students at Pittsford Mendon High School, and their friendship continued when they both enrolled at Cornell University. On February 6th, Charlie and his mother went to Canada, planning to eventually go to China. However, they changed their minds and returned to Pittsford. On February 7th, 2015, Charlie's brother Jeffrey flew from the U.S. to Toronto. On February 9, 2015, the 3 Tans re-entered the United States around 3:15 p.m. About 3 hours later, Charlie's mother called 911, saying that Charlie had shot his father while trying to protect her. She reported that her husband had abused her, and that Charlie was just trying to shield her from her husband.
911 center, what is the address of the emergency?
Yes, hi, my name is Jing Tan. I heard an argument my son talked to my husband.
Ma'am, I can't understand anything you're saying. Does anyone need an ambulance? Did you say you heard a shot? Does somebody in the house have a gun? Who's already dead? You're who? Are you in a safe spot?
Yes, I am.
We need you to wait outside of the house for the police officer's safety.
when the police arrived on the scene. They found Charlie's father deceased in his home office, shot in the chest and face at close range, making his face unrecognizable. There was no sign of a struggle. It seemed Jim was caught off guard while sitting in his answering emails.
Her son or husband arguing the call heard shot. Said someone in the house has a gun. Saying her son shot her husband, caller is hysterical. She's saying that the son was trying to protect himself.
Charlie calmly told the police, "I had to do it, he was going to kill my mom." Jim Tan, 49 years old, showed signs of decomposition, with dried blood all over. His body was no longer stiff, which happens 12 to 24 hours after death and then goes away. This indicated Jim had been deceased for several days by the time Jean called 911 on February 9th. There were also unanswered emails on his computer since February 5th, the same day Charlie had his friend buy a firearm, which proves that Jean's 911 call on February 9th was not truthful, because the incident did not occur on the day she made the call. 4 days later, a grand jury indicted CharlieTan. Anna Valentine, one of his friends, created a GoFundMe for Charlie's legal fees, which raised $46,718, or 62% of its $75,000 goal. On March 5, 2015, Charlie pleaded not guilty to second degree. CharlieTan's case commenced on 14 September 2015. He was later released on bond. Prosecutors got information from CharlieTan's cell phone, which was hard to unlock. They had a warrant to search his and his mother's phones. Tan's phone records showed he sold marijuana to other students for $200 an ounce. He received a 5-pound shipment of marijuana for $12,000 in January 2015 and sold psilocybin mushrooms and DMT, both psychedelic drugs, just weeks before his father's death. No one heard from Jim Tan after February 5th, so authorities believe he was shot that day in the family's Pittsford home. On February 5, 2015, after convincing Whitney to buy a shotgun for him, Walmart surveillance cameras captured both Charlie going to purchase the firearm and then leaving empty-handed, and Whitney showing up hours later and leaving with the firearm. The investors matched the records of the firearm purchased that afternoon to the one found at the scene of the crime at the Tan's residence. On February 5, 2015, Charlie entered his parents' home through the back door, went upstairs, and shot his father 3 times while he was sitting at his desk. It was true that his father was abusive towards Jean, however. At the time of his death, he was caught off guard, and Charlie and Jean's account of events that the shooting occurred in the middle of a scuffle was also found to be untrue. Charlie then told his mother to pack her things, and they drove to Canada. When in Toronto, they bought one-way tickets to Shanghai. On February 7, 2015, Charlie and his mother applied for Chinese travel visas. On February 9, 2015, Charlie and his mother picked up their visas, but by then they had decided to return to the U.S. Charlie says he made this decision because if he went to China, his mother would be blamed for the murder. When they arrived back home, then they decided that his mother should call 911 to report the murder. Charlie also sent an email to his classmates saying they would hear shocking news about him, but it wasn't true. Charlie's lawyer argued that there was no forensic evidence that proved Charlie committed the murder, and proceeded to suggest the possibility of Jean being the shooter instead.
His mother, frankly, has a much greater motive, a much greater incentive, and much greater hatred in which to fuel this type of a violent act.
She's already dead. She's already dead.
Who's already dead?
Charlie's fingerprint was found on a shell casing, not on the firearm, which created doubt on whether he pulled the trigger. The lawyer said the prosecution had a weak case. Why is a firearm residue test not standard procedure in all of the murder cases where family members are found in the home where the crime scene occurred? On October 8, the jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision. On November 5, 2015, the judge declared a mistrial and dismissed the case. The judge's decision left a courtroom and community divided by emotion, from anger to elation, deep confusion to breathtaking relief.
We're very passionate with our conviction of how we felt one way or another.
There's a piece of American cheese, there's a piece of Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese has got some holes. Some of us could get to those holes and fill them, some of us couldn't.
The Subaru at the airport, and there was mention of Border Patrol, and the car had gone over to Canada sometime that weekend after the crime occurred, and nobody ever testified to whose car it was. Nobody testified to who drove that car, the dates it was out of the country.
Going to work this morning. He told us to go back in, start over, And we were willing to do that. And we came back this morning all ready to start, and we thought we were going to come to one. And unfortunately, we were a little surprised by the mistrial.
It does kind of makes you feel as though justice wasn't served.
Charlie, who was 20 years old, smiled widely following County Court Judge James Piampiano's ruling, hugged his lawyers in the courtroom, and left with a group of supporters who have been by the former Pittsford Mendon High School class president's side through months of court appearances and a 4-week trial. The decision prevents any further homicide-related charges from being brought against Charlie in connection with the death of his father. When James Piampiano finished his comments, State Prosecutor William Gargan countered with evidence and testimony that had been presented at trial, including Charlie's own apparent admission that he had killed his father, and his mother's statement to a 911 operator that her son killed her husband. At one point, Gargan suggested Piampiano must have amnesia because he ignored numerous pieces of evidence. Piampiano later asked Gargan if he wanted to retract the statement, which Gargan declined to do. Outside the courtroom, Gargan was composed, but clearly dumbfounded by the decision. "I stand by every decision I made here, and I was more than willing to have handcuffs placed on me to be able to argue my point, because I didn't cross any lines," he said, calling the decision the most shocking and absurd judicial move he's seen in his career as a prosecutor.
And I was more than willing to have handcuffs placed on me to argue my point.
When you have someone saying, "I did it, I had to do it, he was going to kill my mother," and you find the deceased, and you find the murder weapon, and the judge took great pains to point out that the murder weapon was not found in the house, but in the garage. "That's the sort of nuance that is of little meaning," Gargan said, adding that the judge also ignored fingerprints on the shells used in the shotgun that killed Jim Tan and Jean Tan's statements. "Nothing has occurred that could parallel the decision that the court made today," Gargan said. In 2017, an appellate court ruled that the judge's decision couldn't be reversed and Tan couldn't be retried. The appellate judges did say that the judge made a mistake, and there was enough evidence to justify the criminal prosecution. Charlie was forced to withdraw from Cornell University. The withdrawal came as a disciplinary hearing at the school to consider charges that Tan violated the school's code of conduct. He applied to more than 20 universities, and finally one of them, Chicago University, accepted his application. While there, he volunteered in a youth mentoring program. It seemed that Charlie was seemingly getting back to his old self again. However, the case didn't end there. In 2017, federal prosecutors charged CharlieTan with illegally convincing a friend to buy the 12-gauge shotgun used in the homicide. On September 22, 2017, 2 years after his trial, police arrested Charlie for conspiring to buy the firearm that led to his father's death. During his trial, his defense attorneys described a family suffering from domestic violence since 2003, using 911 calls his mother had made. Throughout that time, Charlie never talked about the abuse. On June 22, 2018, Charlie pleaded guilty in federal court in Syracuse to 3 criminal charges related to the purchase of the shotgun used in the murder. He said he decided to plead guilty almost immediately, after his attorneys told him that prosecutors had access to his emails and texts, which would be used in the trial. On 19th November 2018, a federal court judge sentenced Charlie to 20 years in prison for federal gun charges. Typically, if a federal inmate behaves in prison, he will serve 85% of the sentence.
Spent over 4 hours of a day trying desperately to get a gun. He couldn't get it. His first friend couldn't get it. Whitney Knickerbocker couldn't get it. Had to go to the DMV to get his license changed to come back to get it. I mean, these were extraordinary efforts to get this gun.
Or, in Tan's case, 17 years. The 14 months he has served will count against that time. He might be eligible for parole in 2033. And since Tan is a Canadian citizen, will likely be deported after he is released. CharlieTan is currently serving a 20-year sentence at New York's Ray Brook Federal Prison. In November of 2019, Charlie and his legal team requested a reduction in his sentence. In a 5-page letter to senior U.S. District Judge Frederick Scullin, he wrote, "I believe that these 3 questions will allow me to most efficiently express myself. How did you end up in this position? What lessons have you learned? If, when given the opportunity, how will you proceed?" The letter describes Charlie's regret for not seeking help before killing his father. His main emotion, he said, was fear that his father would kill his mother. When I told him that he couldn't put his hands on her, he snapped. He told me to mind my own business, and if she pissed him off again, he'd kill her. As I reflect on those few days, it is obvious that I acted on perhaps 30% knowledge of the situation. All I knew was that my mother was unusually defeated and repeatedly told me that he was going to kill her. I felt like there was no other option, that I had to protect her. The request for a reduced sentence was denied by the federal judge. The basis of their appeal was that Charlie's previous defense attorneys had not provided the court with evidence of his abusive upbringing and how it may have affected his behavior. CharlieTan was offered 2 plea deals in 2015 that would have given him a lesser sentence than he now has. He rejected both plea offers.
CharlieTan went to great lengths to acquire a shotgun unlawfully with lies about the actual purchaser and intended use. He planned to leave school and flee the country, and he found his father working at his computer behind a desk in his slippers and gunned him down, with 1 shot from the hallway and 2 at close range, the last one to his face and instantly lethal.
Charlie received almost $231,000 in cash after his father's death. Additionally, he became a partial owner at his father's company, Dynamax Imaging, and got a 25% ownership stake at the company, valued between $2.4 million to $4 million. Jean and Jeffrey Tan relocated after the second trial. Charlie's mother has 50% ownership at Dynamax Imaging. She received almost $150,000 after her husband's death. Her son, Jeffrey, is now the company's CEO. Why do you think Charlie confessed to his father's murder and went on to refuse the plea deal? Do you think it is out of guilt, or did he decide to just take accountability for his actions? Let us continue the conversation in the comment section. It is always appreciated if you could show your support for the channel by subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Thank you for watching True Crime Capital. Stay safe out there.